Hello, hello, and welcome to the Smart Elections Election Protection Forum. It is a delight to have you with us here. We have a really interesting forum for you this evening or whenever you're watching this. We're delighted to have you with us, and we think that you are going to be really excited also because it's so important that we all work together for fair, accurate, accessible, well-administered, and publicly verifiable elections. Those are our goals. And so we have some information for you tonight. It's a program that's focused on fairness, and fairness is often connected to accuracy because if the elections aren't accurate, they're not really fair, right? So these things all go hand in glove. And we have an excellent guest for you, Howie Hawkins, who is a co-founder of the Green Party all the way back in 1984. Very interesting story there. And also somebody who was the 2020 presidential candidate for the Green Party, and some very, very important points for us to look at in terms of how that election played out. One of the things that was unfair in that election was that the Green Party was denied access to the ballot in a number of states. So that's just basic fair play. People who are qualified and who gain the signatures should be on the ballot, but that in fact is not happening. So we asked a little question in the promos for this event, and that was, who's worse, the Democrats or the Republicans? And I think depending on which party you're a member of, you will have an opinion about that. I think most people think the other party is the worst party. They play dirty. You know, we maybe break the rules now and then, but they really play dirty. And what we are perhaps going to present to you is more of the idea that politics is a blood sport and people play to win. And when they play to win, fairness sometimes goes out the window. And so what we are working toward as a nonpartisan organization, a nonprofit, nonpartisan, is for the playing field to be even, for there to be candidates that are eligible to be on the ballot, for all of the votes that voters intend to be cast as counted, for all of the voters who are eligible to be able to participate, and those who are not eligible, of course, not to participate. But all of those things, the devil's in the details, and we're going to get into it tonight. So we're super excited that you're joining us. And let's just get a little bit of information. I hope you're going to stay with us. That's why I'm kind of teasing you about what's going on. But I want to do some visual descriptions, and I want to tell you who we are. We are Smart Elections. Our website is smartelections.us, and I bet we have a banner for that. We sure do, right there. And we focus on election protection, as I've already begun to discuss with you. And we also focus on accessibility, and we want to make sure that our process is very inclusive. So we'll give some visual descriptions. I am a pale white woman who managed to put some makeup on today, and I got some kind of choppy bangs going here. I can't even figure out which direction they're going. Some hoop earrings, pink earbuds, long brown hair, a necklace, a kind of gray suit, and a brick wall behind me. My partner at this moment is our ASL interpreter. He is Emilio Hernandez. And Emilio, do you want to go ahead and I didn't think you were here tonight, so we made the banner for the other the other interpreter because Alana said you weren't here. But do you want to go ahead and give your visual description for our visually impaired viewers or members?
Sure. Hello, my name is Emilio. I am a bald Latino male with a black beard, wearing a long sleeve black shirt in front of a white wall.
Super. And I'm actually going to pop Alana on so that when we get into it, we don't have to stop and do her visual description. Alana, do you want to go ahead and join us and give a visual description? Welcome.
Sure. My name's Alana. I'm a white female. I've got a black 3/4 length shirt on, a white wall behind me, and brown hair at my shoulders.
And it's a pleasure to have our ASL interpreters with us. And they are provided by Center for Disability Rights, and I think we have, yes, our banner there. It's the Sign Language Connection, which is the organization that works with the Center for Disability Rights, and we're incredibly grateful to them that they provide this wonderful service for us. It's always just so fun to see them here and have them with us. And if you're looking for closed captioning, we do not have it on the live YouTube feed, but you can find it on Facebook. And if you want to help us get it on the live YouTube feed, you will subscribe to our YouTube channel, because channels that have more subscribers are higher in the queue for getting the closed captioning live on YouTube. So go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And Benny Smith, my co-host, is going to be joining us later on. He's going to be starting with a new segment that we have called Benny's Brain. So that'll be really cool to have him out here. But I want to start now with Texas, because Texas is really a remarkable example of one of the ways that the elections currently are not fair, and some very partisan maneuvering that's happening there. And I think that I have some slides for you just to help out a little bit. One of the things, we're calling this our election protection reboot, and there were a couple things that people asked for. One was a little bit more visuals to sort of help absorb the information, more links, more information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put into the chat a link, and this is for the slideshow that we have for you tonight, so that if you yourself want to download that PDF and retain the help you retain the information, and gives you links and things like that. And great to see, I'm seeing all of the hellos in the comments. I love that. Terrific to have everybody here. And this is our PDF for the evening, or for the daytime, whenever you're watching it, I guess for the forum, we should say. And I'm going to throw that link into the chat. And I've got a note here from Ruth. Oh, this is a great question. Can you tell the uninitiated how to subscribe to a YouTube channel? I think it's pretty simple. When you go on YouTube and you go to our channel, and you can find our YouTube channel in the links below this. If you're watching on YouTube, in the links below where you're watching, you can find our YouTube channel, or just go on YouTube and search for Smart Elections. Or we also, actually, I can put our YouTube channel, I think, into the chat. Okay, so this is like the playlist of all of our forums on YouTube. So I'm going to throw that in there. So if you go there, that will be our YouTube. You'll be on our YouTube channel. And anytime you're on our YouTube channel, there should be like a big button that says subscribe. And we want you to hit it. And then we want you to get all your friends to hit it. One thing that we probably don't emphasize enough is that you are our PR machine. We do not have any fancy PR budget. You are our PR machine. And so we ask that you go on YouTube, get your friends on there, subscribe, retweet our tweets, reshare our posts on Instagram and Facebook. That helps us quite a bit to get more people involved. So thanks for that question, Ruth, and go ahead and hit that subscribe on the YouTube channel. I love that. Ruth is saying she is subscribed already. We love you, Ruth. I have to say, Ruth might be our favorite member. I can't tell you how often she sends us emails afterwards about what she loved, or if she's concerned about something. And we would love for you to do that too. So sorry to play favorites there, but Ruth does get a lot of brownie points. So let's talk about Texas. And I think I'm able to share my slideshow with you. I'm going to do my best, and we'll see what happens. So Texas is a really good example of partisan interference in the election process, really. So in Texas, which is controlled by a Republican legislature, they passed a bill. It's called SB 1, Senate Bill 1, and it had some really devastating consequences. So I think I've managed to get my slideshow up here. And this is our question for the evening: who's worse, Democrats or Republicans? This is me. You know by now that I'm election security journalist if you've hung out for a while, and I am the executive director of Smart Elections. And So, oh, and this is our pen. We gave out prizes last time for the quizzes. We're going to do quizzes again. And these pens are not in the mail yet, but they are coming to you if you won last time. So your pens are on the way for the winners last time. And we'll do a couple more quiz questions tonight. Okay, so this is what happened in Texas. The Republicans passed Senate Bill 1, and it made it very difficult and confusing for voters who were trying to vote via absentee ballot. And that is because what was required was really an extraordinary, specific point of information. There were two numbers that voters were allowed to provide if they wanted to request an absentee ballot or actually send their absentee ballot in. One was the original number that they registered with when they had registered to vote. You're talking sometimes about people who are 80 years old and registered 60 years ago, and they are supposed to remember the number that they used to register to vote. Like, was it their social security number? Was it their driver's license number? They're supposed to remember that, or they're supposed to sign up with their current driver's license number. And apparently the paperwork for this was also extremely confusing in terms of where you put the number, which number you put, if you put both, if you put, I mean, the paperwork was apparently very confusing to people, and thousands, they still do not know the exact number, but many people had their ballots rejected, that both their ballots and their applications for absentee ballots were rejected by the thousands. And this created a huge amount of work for the election officials as well. And according to some of the reports that I heard, I was at a briefing from a Texas advocate who said that this is to answer your question, Bruce. Great question in the chat here for Bruce. Wouldn't that constrain Republican voters? I think there's two things happening here. One is that what we saw in the 2020 election was that Republicans were more likely to vote in person, and that Democrats were more frequently using that absentee mail ballot option. And the early numbers that I saw were that Republican ballots were being rejected around 6%, about 6% of ballots, and the Democratic counties were the Democratic ballots were being rejected more in the neighborhood of 30%. So these were huge discrepancies. And I think I'm gonna throw up this article. We have put in a request for this journalist to come and speak with us in 2 forums from now in April. I don't know if she's going to be available, but we did put in a request. Her name is Alexa Yura, and she did some great reporting on this with the Texas Tribune. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this Texas Tribune article into the chat, and we're going to read a bit of it. And I see a comment in the chat from Laura that is insane. And what I'm going to say is that it is not insane at all. And most people feel that it, in fact, was quite deliberate, that it was a very deliberate law that was passed to deliberately make it difficult for Democrats in particular to vote. And I see that our election commissioner and co-host, Benny Smith, has joined us. So I'm going to pop him on here. Hey, Benny, how you doing?
Hey, late.
Heard you got stuck in traffic.
Oh my goodness. It was like the real traffic this time.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you here. So we're just talking about the stuff that's going on in Texas and how kind of crazy it is. Do you want to weigh in on that?
No comment. It is crazy.
No comment?
It is crazy. I'm not studied up enough on it. I mean, I've read a couple of headlines, so yeah, no comment.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just read a little bit of this article from the Texas Tribune, Alexa Yura. And as I said, we have put in a request to have her come and speak with us. So these are pretty crazy figures that they're talking about. And we'll get into it in just a second here. So let me just throw this article up. So make sure you can see me there. And who's up top? Alana, let's get you up top. Okay, great.
I was blinking.
So Lana's in a nightclub.
She's in a disco.
Okay, everybody dance. Some disco.
Go, Alana.
Go, Alana. Okay, I'm gonna put Emilio back on if you're gonna disco. Okay, we're gonna pop Emilio up. Lana's gonna do some disco. Some disco dancing. And I want to talk to you about this article. Okay, so the scale of disenfranchisement will not be known for at least another week, as voters still have time to cure ballots that were found defective because they did not include newly required ID numbers. But in various counties, the percentage of ballots being rejected has ballooned well beyond previous rejection rates. Because of Texas' strict eligibility criteria for voting by mail, older voters and voters with disabilities will be the most affected. People have said this law was enacted to stop voter fraud, but honestly, we've seen voters who are qualified have to do the process twice, sometimes 3 times. Sometimes they quit, said Lisa Weiss, the election administrator for El Paso County, where more than 1,000 ballots have been initially rejected. Heading into primary election day Tuesday, counties reported initial rejection rates anywhere between 8% to 30%, with ID requirements tripping up a significant share of voters in counties large and mid-size, red and blue. And then by contrast, less than 2% mail-in ballots were rejected in 2018 in the primaries. So they've gone from 20% rejection rate to almost 30% rejection rate. And that is actual ballots. The count of ballots marked for rejection because of the ID rules in Harris County alone, 11,135 as of February 28th, easily surpassed the total number of ballots rejected statewide in 2018. So one county, Harris County, which I will say is a predominantly Democratic county, is reporting numbers of rejection of ballots over 11,000, higher than the entire state rejected in 2018. So these are huge, huge increases. And I think one thing, Benny, that you can comment on is just about that comment that you always have about how politics is a blood sport and how these are very high stakes. The 2022 midterms are very high stakes.
Yeah, it definitely, from what I can see, from what I read, it's like a really knee-jerk process that doesn't seem to be pretty well thought out. It's happening in red and blue counties, but you have to know the politics of each county to see if it's strategic. I'm dealing with a similar issue here. Probably gonna get beat up in the papers for some of the comments that I make about it. But I'm actually on the other side. I'm actually defending what would look like politically motivated knee-jerk reactions. So I need to read this one, but you are correct. I mean, if you see the political leanings of these counties, you can probably draw a straight line to whether or not it's strategic or a really bad executed idea.
You're going in and out on your audio a little bit too. You might want to, get the mic up.
Just want to make sure it's not a really bad executed idea, because that's possible too.
Right, or just a bad idea.
Yeah, yeah, bad idea and bad execution too. So you can have a mix of all of that.
Right. That can all be in there. I know that one of the things that's come after that in Harris County is that because possibly they had all of these challenges in terms of dealing with the mail-in ballots, they wound up making a huge mistake in their counting, and they actually left out 10,000 votes in their preliminary count. And now they're getting a lot of heat for that. And they were late. They missed the deadline for when they were supposed to file their requirements. And so these things can snowball when you put people who are not sleeping and working 15, 17 hours a day under enough pressure and change all the rules. It can really mess things up.
Yeah, that's why I says knee jerk. You have people trying to carry out these processes. I think you gotta be careful that we're not looking so much that we're not counting. It's a counting exercise. It's an inventory exercise. And if we're looking for fraud so much, like again, like I think it's disingenuous to think that voters are doing this. So you have a overreaction or overcorrection to the idea that a lot of individuals are creating fraudulent reasons, or they're giving us reasons to police the process, and we don't even follow the process. So you create a new process, you can't even follow it. So maybe we should start there.
Right. So I think what you're saying is that, and we should clarify that and I think it was in the article, but the reasoning for this new law was that the Republicans were concerned about voter fraud.
Oh yeah, that's knee jerk. That's definitely right, and I think it's disingenuous to keep trying to look for ways to do something about the voter, because that's inadvertently who you're going to persecute at the same time. So it's the people who are following the law that is going to be in conflict with the law, and that shouldn't be the intent of a law.
Right. I guess what you're saying is people who really are intent on voter fraud are going to find other
Right.
ways to do it.
Right. They're gonna break the rules. They don't create rules. They don't follow them anyway. We got this new rule now. I can't cheat. No, that's that they break the rules by default. So I
All right.
don't know.
Okay. I think that's a good
It's
point.
just burning on the traffic. I mean, maybe it's the traffic for me.
One of the things that I want to point out about what happened after all of the ballots were rejected, when Harris County made this mistake of miscounting 10, or basically not counting 10,000 votes, ties into our overall goal, which is to get you, that's right, that's you people out there in the chat, that's Kelly and Perry and Ted and Dave and Laura and Mark,
Lana and
all of
Nicole.
you, Ruth, involved in poll watching during the 22 midterms and poll monitoring and trying to make sure that the results are counted accurately. Whether we're looking for fraud or just mistakes, the procedures are really the same. And one of the things that this pointed out was that one of the techniques that we've developed is actually really effective. We're back in the disco.
Yeah. I'm liking it. My screen's got red dots behind it. I don't know. Maybe it's the.
I think it's too distracting though,
She's
Alana.
got some red dots on her.
Switch.
On her
I'd say
shirt
switch
too.
out. But we're really excited that you're trying to spice up the broadcast.
Maybe we're in retrograde. Are we in retrograde right now? Maybe that's it.
If we just came out of retrograde, believe me, I followed it. Mercury retrograde was all of February. I was waiting.
Oh yeah, that definitely was.
And it was tough. Okay, so what happened in Harris County? This is really important. They implemented a new procedure. They have a mandatory reconciliation where they check if the number of voters who voted. Benny, are you texting?
No, I'm trying to silence my phone.
Benny sends texts in the middle. Sometimes he texts me.
I get a call
in the middle of the
every show.
broadcast.
Like
I'll get a text from him. I'm like, why are you texting me? We're on screen together.
I'm silencing my phone. People wait until I get on this and then start calling me like they don't know.
In Harris County, they implemented a new procedure to make sure that the number of voters who voted matched the number of ballots scanned. And in fact, it did not. And what they realized was they had actually forgotten to count 10,000 ballots. They had been scanned and then they didn't get transferred over to the election management system. And so those ballots had not been counted, even though they had been scanned and even though the voters had voted and even though they were perfectly legitimate ballots. And so they found that because of this reconciliation. Now, part of that could very well be because they were just exhausted from all of this process they've been through. But election officials are often exhausted and, overworked. And so it is really important to do these reconciliations. And that is exactly one of the reconciliations that we've developed here at Smart Elections in order to help the public have confidence in election results. We teach you how to check that the number of voters who vote matches the number of ballots scanned in your local jurisdiction. And so if you're interested in doing this with us, go ahead and just put your name in the chat and your group, and we can, reach out to you. We actually have a form that will get you to fill out to sign up and be poll watchers. But the first thing is to just let us get in touch with you. And actually what we can do is you can email us, and I'll put our email up here. We are at contact@smartelections.us. And so if you're interested in participating with us in this poll watching, we are getting started now. Let me put that up one more time, contact@smartelections.us. Please do send us an email ASAP and just put poll watching in the subject line, and we will get in touch with you. So that is a very important part of the process. And we can see that it works, that when you do that reconciliation, you often do find mistakes. And just think, if some of these races turn out to be very, very close within a 10,000 vote margin, how important it will be that they actually found those 10,000 ballots. It can be an extremely important process to verify that these votes are being counted accurately. So that's our segment on Texas. And if you do want to research that more, I will put that link to our PDF into the chat one more time. And there's links to different articles there. And you can research that more and learn more about it. And then we're going to turn it over now. Oh, Bruce Korb, love that. I work the polls. Yes. Awesome. That is another great way to be a participant and make sure that things go well, is to actually work the polls. And we've got Ruth already volunteering. I love that, Ruth. We'll be in touch with you. She's going to be a poll watcher. That's terrific. And Laura, I'd love to be a poll watcher again. Fantastic. So we'll make note of those and we'll be in touch with you about that. Thank you so much for getting involved. That is the name of the game, is getting involved. So the next, and then this is, again, our PDF for more research. For more info, there's links to about 3 different articles on Texas in that, if you want to follow up and get more information about that. We'd love to, facilitate your process in every way that we can. So our next segment is Benny's Brain. And Benny, we don't have a lot of time for this one, so I'm going to say keep it to like 5 minutes and just do a brief overview.
I'm totally with that.
Okay, so this is our new segment called Benny's Brain. And tonight he's going to talk about chain of custody. And I did make you a slide, so go ahead and dive in and we'll get this slide up for you.
All right. So a lot of what we're covering right now is solved by a solid chain of custody. So I guess the first piece is what is chain of custody? So the textbook definition of chain of custody is probably more in the IT realm, but the significance is the same. So the definition holds for elections. And basically, a chain of custody is a process that tracks the movement of evidence through its collection, the safeguarding and analysis life cycle by documenting each person who handled the evidence, the date and the time that it was collected or transferred for the purpose of the transfer. So for election, that's all physical evidence and electronic evidence, any record that's generated. And these are just evidence controls. Why is it important? It keeps the entirety. Keeping it in its entirety, right? If you keep all of the pieces of the chain and you keep them intact, it will ensure that county officials will know who is eligible to vote. And that's going to be your voter rolls and your poll books, electronic poll books, who voted in an election. There will be a participating voting listing that tells you the number of the participants in an election and the method of voting. So preferably a hand-marked paper ballot, but that's tracking of the physical ballot, keeping track of how the ballots came in, how they were issued, how many there were, an entire process around it. And for ballot marking devices or any other type of device, there are going to be audit logs, and there are going to be machine technician reports or maintenance reports or odometer readings that track how many votes were cast on the machine before the election and how many basically miles were on the machine before the election happened. And the addition and subtraction of those things can tell you what happened. And the last one is the evidence transfer and storage. That's going to be who signed the equipment in and out, who authorizes accesses to the facility. So in your example about losing 10,000 ballots, a chain of custody would have told you where it broke in the chain. You would have had the last signature to know that it didn't make it to the next link in the chain, and you would have found that would have been in your gap. And the other reason why they're important is for election disputes. These are going to be your lawsuits and your recounts. And there's a segment on blackboxvoting.org. If you go to blackboxvoting.org and look for audits, or no, sorry, chain of custody, there will be a document, and I used a little bit of this from that article. So the other piece is that audits would depend solely on this. This is authentic evidence. These are evidentiary records. So the next question that I had is, where is it derived? Well, the U.S. Congressional Code 20701, the title is the retention and preservation of records and papers by officers of elections, deposit with custodian. That's where you get your custody. And penalty in violation, and that's on house.gov. There's a link that we can put in the chat. But this is where you hear it a lot, where election integrity activists are now saying, well, you have to preserve the records for 22 months. This is where that comes from. And it's important because that statute says that records created, anything created in connection to an election must be preserved, and this is for federal elections, but that's going to be House, Senate, and President races. And the reason why is I always liken it to a plane crash. It's apropos. A plane crash. When a plane crashes, they clear the site and they put the entire plane back together, right? Because all of the debris is present, and they can figure out everything they need to about a plane crash because they have all of the pieces together. So the federal statute is basically doing the same thing. It's trying to preserve and make sure that if a record was created, you have it. So you should not be allowed to destroy any pieces of what happens. That's like, somebody getting hurt and you take them to the hospital in an ambulance and burn up the ambulance, right? You can't do that because that was the method of how the person was transported. And there may be some evidence there that they want to look at. Another topic is just incurable uncertainty. And I think I lifted this one straight out of the article from Black Box, because this is so important. Handling election records and data must be scrupulously careful in order to demonstrate to the public that there's been no tampering or contamination, right? So in court cases, the chain of custody violations can result into the refusal to admit evidence or throwing an entire case out. So what do you think is supposed to happen for elections? Chain of custody violations should result in incurable uncertainty, and courts should have the authority to redo elections if they cannot authenticate the results.
It doesn't happen very often, though. I know. I
right,
remember
and
when I was reading Tracy Campbell's book, that was one of the things that he commented on. There was one case where he said the results actually were thrown out and they had to have a new election, but he said it was exceedingly rare.
Yeah, we had one case here. It was Kenneth Whalum. He was a school board race, and by the time they ordered a new election, they drew him out of the district. So there's definitely some rough politics going on there, and that happened in Shelby County. So the next piece is, where can a chain of custody be strengthened, right? And that's a lot of what we're describing now. Documentation around that's surrounding these voting methods. There should be documented processes of what to do, who signs for what. You should have a lot of documentation around these key pieces in the chain. Public records, video surveillance. You should be able to pull video surveillance and see who walked into the office. If you got 10,000 ballots that was in a room, there should be some video surveillance. We should know who walked in there. And the other piece, you should publish all the persons in connection with the essential parts of the election process. This is a public process, right? So everybody that's participating in this process should be well known, and I would add they should be under oath. And meaningful public observation to allow the authentication of the votes and vote titles by any person. Now that's probably going to be a citizen or or a registered voter in most states. But I took the liberty of pulling a section of code out of the Tennessee code, because I mean, we don't do it here, but the law is clear. And section 217.109 talks about poll books, voter signature lists, and ballot applications as evidence. It's in the heading. They saying this is evidence. So it says poll books, voter signature lists, and ballot applications, copies of them, certified by the officer having custody of them. Right. So somebody's got to sign a list of who all these people were, are official records, and shall be received as evidence in any case arising out of the election. They may be impeached by other evidence, but they are evidence. And there's a quandary, or if the poll books, voter signature lists, and ballot applications or copies of them are not certified, they may be nonetheless proved by other credible evidence and received as evidence in an election contest. So these are real laws that probably exist in most states. And what you'll find to the topic of tonight, depending on what county you're in, they may be relaxed or not being followed. Sometimes because people don't understand them. Sometimes because people they come into the office and they do what has always been done, and they've never went to go and check. That's why I refer to my TCA book as my Bible, because I go read it first. And there's another example, and I'll be done, where I had to take a flight to Los Angeles, and there was a special election, and I was in charge of the lockbox that unlocks where the paper ballots are. And I couldn't get the other commissioner to commit that he would handle the keys for me. And the statute basically says that you can't give the keys to somebody in the other party. So I knew he was going to be there, but I knew I wasn't going to meet him before. So I had the dilemma of how am I supposed to protect the chain? And I read in the statute that it says the member of the opposite party should not have possession of them, or it should be increasingly hard for him to do anything bad with it. And so what I did was I went to the store and I bought a lockbox that you put on the front of a house, and I put a code on it, and I left it in the office in a manila envelope. And they went off on me. They told me I was breaking the chain, and I got to arguing with nearly everybody there except for one commissioner. And I told them, I said, well, if you think I broke the chain, then unlock the boxes. And there was like 70 boxes, and they said, we can't unlock the boxes because you won't give us the code. I said, the fact that I have the code and you can't get the keys mean I didn't break the chain. and that's how you preserve the chain, because you can authenticate. The person that had to call me had to be a Democrat, and I would only give the code to him. And that's how I kept the chain. That's how I kept the chain from being broken.
Wow. It's complicated. It's very complicated.
You're just gonna have to buy bolt cutters and cut 70 locks in order to get those boxes open. And they was like, well, I was like, well, would you like to go cut all 70 boxes, or let me give you the code?
We got another sign up here. Bonnie Chittister, chain of custody is so critical. Sign me up for poll working. Thanks. Yeah. That's fantastic. Okay, we really appreciate this. We got 3 signups for poll working today, so that's terrific. And well, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a quick break to do some pay the bills, things like that. Right. And then we'll be right back with our guest, Howie Hawkins, who is the co-founder of the Green Party and a former presidential candidate. So one thing that you need to know about us is that we need your support. Mm-hmm. So this is where we talk about how much we love you and how much we hope that you love us also. And one way that you can show that is by making a donation. And we really do need your support. That is how we pay for the streaming platform and pay our project manager, pay for salaries, pay for public records requests. If we want to investigate election results, we do really use those donations that you give us. And so we are asking you, if there's any way for you to make a donation, please do make a donation, and we will put that money to very, very good use. And the easiest way for you to do it is to go to our website and just click on donate. Again, our website is smartelections.us, and put that up, smartelections.us. And I'm also going to put into the chat, this is the website that you go to make a donation. So when you go to smartelections.us and click on donate, it takes you right to this website. Fractured Atlas is our umbrella organization that gives us nonprofit status, and so that's where you actually make the donation. If you can make a monthly donation, that is the best, because then we have more stability. We get those funds coming in each month. Donations are tax deductible. And we also have a dedication page. So if you want to dedicate that to somebody special, a memorial, or if you want to just dedicate it to a concept that is really important to you, an author, people have dedicated their donations to all sorts of different concepts and people. And so we would very much welcome a dedication as well. And then the other way that you can really help us out, as I mentioned, is by supporting us on social media. And we are on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and YouTube. So you can subscribe and like us on all of those channels. And we really hope that you'll do that, because that just, it helps get the message out and gets more people involved, which is really what we're all about. We're about making sure that more and more people get involved, and we elevate election reform to the urgent national priority that it absolutely needs to be. And you can find out more about all of this information on our website, about our links to all of our social media channels, and links to donate. All of that is on the website. Okay, so we're going to get our guest on here. It is a pleasure to introduce Howie Hawkins. Howie, thank you so much for being with us. And we are going to put you into the hot seat. Great to have you on board.
Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. So one of the first things that I want to hear about is, this was a surprise to me. I did not know that you were a co-founder of the Green Party. Can you just tell us a little bit about that? That must have been pretty exciting.
Well, we had a meeting in 1984 in St. Paul, Minnesota, on the heels of about 30 members of the German Green Party getting into their Bundestag, their national parliament. And I was invited because I'd been involved in the Anti-Nuclear Clamshell Alliance, and Clamshell Alliance sent me and another guy. But I've been involved in third-party politics since the Peace and Freedom Party in 1968, the People's Party, the Citizens Party, because coming up in the 60s, I saw both parties dragging their heels on civil rights, losing the war on poverty in the U.S. war on Vietnam, and felt we needed an alternative. So we got started in '84, organizing locally, running local candidates. And, in the period since then, we've elected about 1,500 different people to local office. And we have about over 100 in office. But getting to higher office, one of the issues we're talking about is access to the ballot. That's very difficult in this country. So we're plugging away. I think we can claim credit for putting the Green New Deal on the national agenda. I ran on that for governor in 2010 in New York. Jill Stein made a Green New Deal for America her theme in 2012 and 2016. And then I ran for president on it in 2020, and it got picked up. So that's been the historic role of third parties. They bring issues to the fore that are neglected, like the Liberty Party and the question of abolishing slavery, or the farmer populist Greenback Labor and People's Party in the late 19th century on issues like monopoly and banking and railroad regulation. And in the Socialist Party and the progressive parties in the early 20th century, things like Social Security and direct elections of senators. So even if we don't win the office, I think we make a difference. The problem is it's getting harder and harder to get on the ballot in this country over the last 100 years.
Let me just ask you a question. If people want to learn more about that, because some of those parties I know about and some of them I don't know about, if we want to learn more about kind of the history of third parties in the US, is there a good resource, a good book or an article that you would recommend to people?
Well, I wrote up an account that's pretty brief, but I think covers it in a ebook called The Case for an Independent Party of the Left, which is on my campaign website, howiehawkins.us. That's the briefest one. There are books that go over that history for different periods. There's an article by a historian named Mark Lause, L-A-U-S-E, you can probably find online, that also goes over that history.
And what's his book called?
It's an article. I can't remember
Oh,
the
it's an
exact
article.
title,
Mark
but
Ross
it's about
article.
third party history throughout the. He's written books about things like the, what do you call it, the Civil War's last campaign. The Greenback Labor Party in 1880 tried to restore Reconstruction, and had integrated meetings in the South with armed guards trying to roll back the rollback of Reconstruction.
Wow. What
Obviously,
party
they
was
didn't
that?
succeed, but Mark has written a lot about third party history.
That's fascinating. What party was that in the South?
Greenback Labor.
Greenback Labor Party. That's,
Yeah,
I'm
it
sure
was-
that would be a really
it was-
fascinating story. So I put
Yeah.
those in the chat for people. The Case for an Independent Party on the left. Check out Howie's website. What's your website, Howie?
HowieHawkins.us.
Okay, so and I know that you're on Twitter also.
Yep, at Howie Hawkins.
Okay, so go ahead and you can check out that article at Howie's website or follow him on Twitter. So talk to us about, no, that's not what we wanted there. We just wanted the website there, right? Talk to us about this ballot access. And I think this first thing to just make clear to people is what is ballot access. I think it may be something that people aren't exactly clear about. Like chain of custody, it's a term in elections that is really important to understand.
Yeah, I mean, when I petition to get on the ballot, a lot of people say, what, you're not on the ballot? You just can't run? Yeah, in this country, you've got to get big petitions to get on the ballot. And so in terms of voting rights, candidate access to the ballot is as important as voter access. So the voters have all their choices. That's part of their rights. And we don't really have them in this country. Our ballot access requirements are off the charts. The best comparison is running as an independent for a district seat for the national parliament, in our case, the House of Representatives. It's different in every state, but like in New York, it's 3,500 signatures in 42 days. In Illinois, it's 15,000 signatures. In Georgia, it's 20,000. Alabama, 30,000. Indiana, over 40,000. You want to do that in the United Kingdom and run as an independent for the House of Commons? 10 signatures.
Wow.
You want to do it in New Zealand? 2 signatures.
Oh, wow.
In Australia and Canada, it's 100 signatures. And in this country, in most states, it's thousands of signatures.
And tens of thousands. You're talking about 30,000
And-
signatures in one
yeah.
of those states.
Tens of thousands. It's even worse than it is in Putin's Russia. Of course, the problem there is if you get your petition completed, his minions may still not let you on the ballot, but that's another story.
And I think one of the things that people, I think is important to point out, especially Democrats, when I talk to Democrats, they tend to say, well, those Republicans, they're the ones that are really playing dirty all the time. But it was the Democrats who over and over again have knocked the Greens off the ballot and prevented the Greens from being on the ballot, even when you have collected those tens of thousands of signatures. And I think, and Pennsylvania in 2020 was an example of that. You were on the ballot in Pennsylvania and actually got knocked off.
Yeah, we needed 5,000 signatures. We turned in 8,500. And
So almost double what was required.
yes. And in this case, we screwed up a little bit. We had to petition with favorite sons and daughters because our convention was July 15th. The petition was due August 3rd. So they had to start petitioning before we had our nominations. And then there's a substitution process. And the problem is one of the candidates faxed in their affidavit saying that they wanted to withdraw. So in this case, our vice presidential candidate could be on the ballot. And so the Democrats sued. They also challenged 7,500 of those 8,500 signatures.
Now, just to be clear about this, which I think is important to point out. So, and people, I think this process is a little bit confusing. So tell me if I got this right, Howie. Basically, you didn't know who the candidates were yet. So you have these kind of like placeholder candidates, and then they have to send in their affidavit saying, I'm withdrawing, and here our real candidates are coming on the ballot.
Right.
And, did I get that right?
That's right.
Okay. And then in Pennsylvania in 2020, the person who sent in their affidavit to say, I'm withdrawing, the placeholder, messed up slightly because she didn't do it in person. She faxed it. Correct?
Instead of fax, instead of what they call a wet document.
What's a
And
wet document?
Wet signature.
It's the actual document that was signed and notarized by a notary public.
Okay, but to be fair, it was in the middle of a pandemic that she faxed it in instead of taking it in person.
Well, that's a whole nother thing. We tried to get the requirements lowered. We did in some states, not in Pennsylvania. And some states allowed electronic signatures. Pennsylvania did not. So we had to go out there with gloves, masks, hand sanitizer, and social distancing trying to get signatures. I was down in Scranton a couple of days. It was very difficult. I've never had so much difficulty getting signatures. But
And even so, you got
we got
8,500
enough.
signatures.
We got enough signatures. But the
And then-
Democrats, they challenged most of the signatures, which wasn't a serious challenge. It was a way of, we had to hire a lawyer and get volunteers and spend 2 weeks documenting signature by signature that these people were in the voting record. And then when we showed up in court, the Democrats said, oh, never mind, we're dropping that, objection. And they stuck with the paperwork, which it went to the district level and then the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And every step of the way, the Republican judges voted to put us on and the Democrat judges voted to put us off. And we found that out in every state where we were challenged. These hack judges, the law and the facts didn't matter. They were purely partisan, and their decisions, they weren't the best decisions they'd ever written, I think, when they denied us the ballot. But anyway.
This is, I think that just actually kind of blew my mind, though, when you told me that. So it really didn't matter what the paperwork was. It really didn't matter what the details were. The Republicans tried to keep you on the ballot, and the Democratic judges wanted you off the ballot over and over again. Like you said, in Texas, the Democrats lost their suit because the judges were Republicans.
At the first level, but then when it got to the Supreme Court level, it was 5-2 Democrats over Republicans, and that's how they voted to keep us off the ballot. Now, I would say in Pennsylvania, technically that was a mistake. That young man should have showed up with the document rather than faxing it. And, if you want to be really strict, and that's a debate. I mean, the Republican dissenting opinion said, well, there's legislation that says you can correct things if it's clear. And the information was all there. So that was Pennsylvania, but it was worse in Wisconsin. Our vice presidential candidate moved across her town in Florence, South Carolina during the petitioning period. Her address changed. We notified the Board of Election, and it took them 3 recommendations to settle on what they wanted us to do, which was put her current address on current petitions, which we did. And then the Democrats objected. And when we went to the hearing, they said we couldn't speak and present our evidence because we didn't send a letter to a certain official, which is not in any of the regulations of the election law, but is customary because Democrats and Republicans have had cases where their candidates have moved during the petitioning period. And then we appealed to the state Supreme Court, and they sat on it for a week. Meanwhile, the Democrats messaged that we were holding up the absentee ballots that had already been printed. That was not true. The Milwaukee Journal Sentinel started calling around the boards of elections. They couldn't find anybody who had printed ballots yet. Yet that went out on MSNBC, Rachel Maddow, Democracy Now!, Amy Goodman, and they didn't correct it when the Journal Sentinel made their report. So in the end, they didn't even decide that case on the merits. They said the Green Party is too late. That's what the Democrats said. And the dissent said, well, what about the facts in the law, which was, kind of relevant, but it wasn't even considered. And probably the worst case was Montana, where we had been on the ballot, we'd had primaries, we had candidates on the ballot, they're campaigning, and there's a distribution requirement that a certain number of signatures need to be from a certain number of assembly districts. And they found an assembly district that they could start trying to convince people to withdraw their signatures. This is months after the petition was certified. And they did that by email, and the people told us they were being pestered, they were being harassed. Nobody'd stop calling them. They show up at the door. So they just said, okay, get me off. And they sent emails. There's nothing in the election law that says you can email to change a petition signature, which itself is like an affidavit with a signature and a witness. So in that case, again, the Democrats at the state level, the Supreme Court level, voted to say we're off the ballot.
And so in those states that you mentioned, you got bumped off the ballot. In Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, in Montana, they succeeded in getting the Green Party presidential candidate off the ballot in 2020, correct?
Correct.
So yeah. So I think the point that we're trying to make here to people is that both of the parties are going to play dirty when they feel they need to play dirty. You want to jump in there, Benny?
It's a blood sport.
So see if we have comments here that we want to take. We can't take that one, Mark, because there's profanity in it. But if people want to look in the, if people want to look at Mark's comments, he said that maybe we need a third party win to run our country to end the certain type of bad show that we have going on in this country. And here's a comment from Kelly Lane. The Democratic Party is doing everything it can to keep grassroots candidates off the ballot, and this includes some election integrity activists. I don't think we have time to get into the Voting Rights Act, Kelly, but the Voting Rights Act definitely, I don't know if you want to just say briefly a sentence or two about what the Voting Rights Act would do to the third party candidates, Howie.
Well, there have been three versions, and what they did was change the public campaign funding program for president. In the first version, the For the People Act made it much harder, 5 times harder to get the small donations in 20 states to qualify. The second version, the For the People Act, completely eliminated presidential campaign funding, which it's astonishing. The media didn't report it. The good government groups didn't say anything. That was a major post-Watergate reform. They just took the campaign funds and put it into a new program for House candidates, which is also difficult for minor parties like the Green Party to qualify for it. And then in the third version, for Freedom to Vote, John R. Lewis, they said nothing about the presidential campaign fund. I think that might have been because they were moving so fast, they forgot to leave out that section that eliminated it. But in any case, we've been commenting on that all year and saying part of having fair ballot access and fair elections is the point of public funding is to level the playing field.
Oh my God.
And the way they were setting it up, it was more public money for candidates that are already well-funded privately.
Sorry, I'm trying to block this spam user. Sorry about the spam in the chat, folks. I've been trying my best to block it.
Yeah,
so
they're not a Green Party though.
The spammers?
No, they attack the Green Party.
Spammers are nonpartisan, I think.
There's Green Party, they get blocked.
I don't think we have time to go into some of these questions, but they're great questions about multi-seat ranked choice voting would work. So those are all that we have covered multi-seat ranked choice voting in a previous forum, the one with Steve Mulroy. So go ahead, that link that I put up in the chat to our YouTube forums, go and look for the Steve Mulroy forum, and we talked in detail about multi-seat ranked choice voting systems there. This is a pretty good comment. I think we can take the Democrats and Republicans are all about free markets until it comes to choice in who we can vote for. So that's a comment from Dave Heller there. And I think that is what we have time for, but it's really exciting to have you with us, Howie. We really appreciate you being here. And
well, I want to thank you, and I want to say that multi-choice ranked choice voting for proportional representation gets rid of the spoiler effect, and then I think the Democrats and Republicans would relax, because the winner-take-all single-member district system, does create the problem for splitting the vote. So if we change that system, and we're making progress on that, we got more jurisdictions using some form of ranked choice voting now than we've ever had. So I think that's an avenue we can take and make progress on these issues.
Oh, that's a fascinating point, Howie. So I hadn't sort of put all that together. So I love it that you're really bringing that home for us. If we switch to a multi-party ranked choice vote system, then the Democrats and the Republicans don't have to worry that these votes are going to be the deciding vote that makes them lose, because the votes would be transferred to someone's second choice. If they're voting for the Green Party, presumably that's a Democratic second choice. And so they would still get the vote eventually if the Green Party candidate didn't win.
In a single seat race. In a multi-seat race, you know, the Greens on the left and the Libertarians on the right would probably get some seats. But
it still wouldn't be a spoiler effect. It wouldn't
Right.
prevent the Democrats
Right.
or the Republicans from
true.
winning.
it
I
means we'd
think-
have, you know, everybody get their fair share representation instead of it being exclusive for people that aren't Democrats and Republicans.
It's very interesting. So again, go ahead and take a look at that program where we had Steve Mulroy on if you want to hear more about that. So that's what we have time for. Howie, thank you so much for being on the forum. We always learn so much when you're here. And so thank you so much for being our guest.
Well, thank you.
Okay. So I want to just we didn't really get to the quiz questions because we had so much. So I want to do just like maybe 2 quiz questions, and I'm going to make them hard. So if people get them, then you will get your pen. So here's one.
I never got my pen.
It's coming. I haven't sent them,
Okay.
but they are.
All
I
right.
have all we have George Ripley and
I'm
Matt
snitching.
Lucene.
I just
And
wanna say it.
you have a pen coming because Perry
All right.
Busby wanted to make sure that Perry was going to give you his pen, Benny, that
I'll
he
Perry get
won
his pen.
last time.
Okay.
But we're going to send you your own pen, and Perry will still get his. So the pens are coming, folks. We've got them all picked out for you. So here's a question for you. This is one of my favorite election fraud stories, and I think I've mentioned it before. So if people have been paying attention, you'll know this. There was something that was put across the wires in an election in New York State to prevent the election results from going through. What was it? Does anybody know? Thanks. Laura says she learned something at every forum. What was it? It was not election results. It was put through on the New York wires to prevent election results from going through. Anybody? I'll give you some options.
Like Coca-Cola?
Was it the entire election law statutes that they put through? Was it the phone book, or was it the Bible? Who wants to guess? This is your quiz question for a pen. We're only going to have 2 questions, so if you get this, you're probably going to get a pen. Nobody knows? I am so surprised. I feel like I've mentioned this more than once. You can guess. You have a 30% chance if you guess. Going once? No one's guessing?
Can I
Going
guess?
twice? Yeah, Benny, do you know it?
It's in the Bible.
It was the Bible. Yes,
Yeah.
Benny remembered. Sorry,
It's a
Dave.
book.
We had
Right.
2 phone books, but Benny got it. So Benny earned his pen finally this time.
Bam.
Mark, you weren't fast enough there. I think Mark was trying to get it. Okay, so that's question number 1. Benny got that one. So we're going to do one more. And this one is a question about presidents. There is a particular president who started off his career by having to encounter a very serious election fraud in his state. And it formed a lot of his a lot of his approach, his understanding of the law, was because he encountered this early on in his career. There was election fraud in one of I think the very first race that he had. So who knows? Hillary, yes, you got it right, but Benny already won. So who knows which president was who encountered? Yes, Lon Devitt got it immediately. It was Carter in Georgia. Lon Devitt, nicely done. Carter encountered a county in Georgia where the sheriff was intent on making sure that he lost. And it was a big story that ran for weeks and weeks in the papers there. They had to send people, I believe they even went door to door and got affidavits of the voters who voted for Carter. I can't remember all the details, but sorry, Hillary, no, Lon got it. It was Carter who encountered election fraud early on in his first political campaign. And he actually won that battle. Surprisingly, they overcame the sheriff in that town. And he went on to win that. It was a state office. And then after that, he won the presidency. And as we know, Jimmy Carter has been somebody who has worked tirelessly to to support fair elections. And it was a very, very formative part of his early political campaign. So I think that's our forum today. We got a new pen winner, Lon Devitt. No, Lon is trying to give Benny his pen. Why everybody wants to give Benny their pens? It kills me.
I got the Bible question. So
Benny is getting a pen. He got one from Perry last time, and he earned one this
No,
time.
Perry's gonna get his pen. You had to give me a pen.
Perry is going to get his pen. Benny is going to get his pen, and Lon is going to get a pen this time also. So that is our
need a
forum.
prop for my background.
It's a pretty small pen. I don't know how you're gonna frame it.
Put it on my forehead.
Okay, that's our forum for this evening. Oh, I hope that you learned a lot. If you enjoyed the forum, please put your comments in the chat. Let us know what you liked about it, that you liked it, what you learned. It really helps us a lot. I see people doing that. Catherine Ray, excellent forum. We really appreciate those comments in the chat because it helps us to let other people know what a great forum that you're having. Thank you so much for those comments. And put more of them in the chat if you can. And if you want to send us other comments, improvements, things like that, you have our email address. It is smart elections comments. What are we? smartelections.us is our website, and our email address is comments@smartelections.us. So I know we have a banner for that. You can send us your things that you want to improve, changes, suggestions. Tell us how much you love us. contact@smartelections.us. Remember to make a donation. Please make a donation. And Benny, you want to tell them about signing up for next forums?
Yeah, next forum is on the 22nd. I think I got
Indeed.
a conflict that day, but yes, sign up for the next forum. It's on the 22nd. You can always take a look at our past episodes in the links below. I said a comment that Steve Mulray is running for district attorney here. That is correct. And check out his forum. He's got a lot of ranked choice knowledge.
Super. So I put the link to sign up for our forums. And as Benny said, you can watch all of our past forums at the YouTube link. I put it in the chat previously, and it is down below the video. You have lots of links to check out. So we're going to say good night. And how does one get into chat? I think you have to have a YouTube sign in to do the chat on Facebook. Lou, anybody should be able to do the chat. I don't know. You shouldn't have any problem doing chat on Facebook. So join us again. We are going to have a really exciting program on March 22nd. So here's what happened. I went to this conference in New York of the Election Commissioners Association, and I filmed all the different vendors there. There were many different vendors: Clear Ballot, Heart, InterCivic, Dominion, ES&S, as well as Clear. I say Clear Ballot? What did I not say?
You said Clear Ballot.
I said Clear Ballot, Heart, InterCivic, and I guess Dominion and ES&S. Plus, we also are going to a demo on March 16th with Democracy Live. So I'll probably have some footage from that. So in 2 weeks on March 22nd, we're going to show you all of these different voting machines and talk about what we think are strong. Strong features that they have or vulnerabilities that they may have. So that's going to be a really interesting forum. Please do come back and join us.
I got an announcement. I met with the new incoming senior vice president of government relations for ES&S, Brandon Clifton. Really sharp guy. He gave me an invitation to come out to the ES&S headquarters to take a look at what they're doing.
Very interesting. Are you going to do that?
I think I will.
Okay, so keep us posted on that front. That sounds like an adventure.
Sounds dangerous.
It sounds dangerous. I know. I think keep us
He's a
posted.
great guy, though.
They've been inviting me also, so maybe we can go together.
Yeah.
Okay. Just come back and join us on March 22nd, and remember, this is what democracy looks like.